I think some of the feedback for this game is falling into three camps for me. I am CouchCube. This is my review of the single player game Avowed, which is out on Microsoft via Obsidian. No Sony release date as of yet, and it may remain that way. Now that brings me on to the camps. The first are the people who are quite involved with Xbox and Microsoft and have been waiting for a half decent exclusive for a while, and Obsidian are a great developer with awesome heritage. They have been canonizing this game unequivocally and understandably. Then you've got this second group who were sort of spawned from the last 4 years, the Biden administration dealing with DEI, Sweet Baby Inc., external forces coming into the industry and sort of injecting politics that have nothing to do with gaming. I think it's quite important for the second group to find some sort of wokery within the video game. If they don't find any, they're kind of screwed. And I don't know how they're going to maintain that content model when things iron out, which they will. Some of these are also Sony fans, so they're a little bit annoyed that they're not getting a massive AAA action role-playing game over on their systems. So a lot of them keep running with this Skyrim analogy, which is blowing my mind because Obsidian did have access to Bethesda's engine way back with Fallout New Vegas. I don't think Avowed was ever built as a Skyrim beta. I think if anything, they should be comparing this to The Outer Worlds, which is a fantastic game, and this has loads in common with it, which is such a great thing. Avowed barely has any politics in it, but it kind of gets on with being a really good fantasy sword and sorcery game. If you want a good case study on how external diversity consultancy can potentially ruin a game, check out Forspoken, Forsaken, Luminous Studios. They closed down. It was a disaster because of this aforementioned reason. I am convinced, and I know this sounds a little bit Alex Jones, that administration was really pushing financial gain towards groups that wanted to see video games reflect potential political directions. But I think that is all coming to an end now, and we can start healing again. When I put the video for Monster Hunter Wilds together, I was talking about the character creation, and I had a dig at Western video game developers via Valguard about how ludicrous some of those creations can look. And I had a nice comment from somebody saying, look, I was with you right up until that point in the video. Why did you have to bring politics into it? Why do you have to step into this arena? My response was, it wasn't us original traditional gamers that brought all of this into the industry. It was an external push. And there's your third camp. People like us who just want to play decent video games again. I would love to not have to talk about it, but we do have to address some of these issues. And that's why I always swing towards Eastern studios or developers, because none of this affects them at all. They've kept going and they've made great sales because of it. Let's get on with the review of the game. Okay, let's look at what we're looking at. Obviously, this is running on my PC. GTX 1660, mid-level card, but I have a terrible processor. Now, it defaulted with ray tracing on, could not believe that, and some of the settings sort of around the medium mark. I lifted all of the enhancements off, like these new NVIDIA filters, and just kept it raw, took the ray tracing off, got it up to high, and managed 90% of the time 60 frames per second. I am very happy with the way this game looks on my system, and for that Game Pass entry cost, this is a damn good deal. This is a great piece of example footage. I'm still in the starter biome. I'm on my way to a side or main quest, can't remember. There's a little tunnel with spiderwebs at the entrance. I'm like, what's all this about? Go down, loads of them. There's a big fat main one. I'm like, yes, let's that bad boy down. Where is my high ranked reward? Then all of a sudden another energy bar appears and the game's like, that wasn't your main spider. Notice what I'm using here. I've got a two-handed axe going, and with all ARPGs, particularly Sword and Sorcery, I like to stick to the traditional brawler build, vanilla, but this system makes it so easy for you to switch out on the fly and experiment with combining spells and range attacks with one-handed weapons. There's pistols, massive rifles. You can go dual wielding on pistols. We'll look at that later, but I'm so overjoyed with how much input you get with choosing how you go out there and face the enemy. When it comes to companions, it is just a one-button attack option depending on what rank you've got them up to. There is no go here, do that, unlock this, which can cause some problems if there's a fight coming up that you don't want to get involved in. That one we'll come to because I kind of appreciate its analogies with the Outer Worlds and that system. Notice I'm pausing the game in real time to access a wheel that also gives me my spells and certain buffs and my companion power. So there is a bit of that, dare I say it, early Dragon Age BioWare feel to it. Combine that with an unbelievably well implemented dodge to the side or backwards, just like you would see in Cyberpunk, but so smooth and so integrally woven into the day-to-day combat that it's the most natural thing. And dodging, diving, circling around enemies is fantastic.
On seek! Next one's mine! Beat that, Marius!
I'm also sporting the old pistol and spellbook build. None of that old twig business. You mess around with me, you get a bullet if you're not going to get an electrical bolt up your backside. I love being able to have that malleable option with what you're selecting to fight with. More scenery. Why are we looking at more scenery? Because I want to just remind you, this is ray tracing switched off with a graphics card that belongs in a museum. This isn't even ultra, fair enough we're only at 1080, but I was constantly impressed with this starter world and biome. We've got a couple more coming up and the quality stays extremely high. I did want to just briefly go back to that character creation subject, and you do have to pick a sort of role, like who you are with your backstory. And I went for the war hero, typical vanilla alpha. It's role playing, I'm allowed. I would say about 90% of my dialogue options offered me an angle integral to that character choice. That one blew me away a little bit, and it's got me thinking about replays and going in a very different direction with sort of in-game attitude and seeing what those outcomes are all about. I'd be keen on feedback with that one if you guys have tried a few different directions. So the poor old 1660 did come a cropper when you get to some of the built up areas and town sections. Now this has been mentioned in some of the slating of the game's NPC behaviour or lack of it. They don't really react to anything that goes on within these bigger hubs when you're talking to a lot of characters. It's quite dumbed down. This is not a bustling metropolis by any stretch of the imagination.
This is my district.
But it sort of makes up for that with what's going on outside in that wider world, or outer world. Great pun, Coop. That's why you guys sub. The bears, oh my god, let's talk about the bears. The bears make up the numbers for like additional enemies when it comes to being on the camps or even just wandering around on a solo front. They do get mutated and fungal-sided, not a word, fungulated. The Last of Us, some of them are fun guys. You don't get much room to walk around, mate. That's a dad joke plethora. The game does push back quite well, offering you higher ranked enemies and areas, and my advice would be to completely exhaust that starter Dawnshore area before moving on to Emerald, because there's stuff that's massively mean, and I'm also trying to get through as much of that content as possible to show you guys as broader vertical slice as I can, but I would definitely recommend doing all bounties and all subquests in that first area because they're all great and you need the rank, to be fair. That brings me on to the subject of armor and loot. It's kind of perfectly pitched for the player, but you don't have any variables on your companion. The slots for actual cosmetic or stat change are chest, wrist and shoes or boots. And one of the major blows to me is no helmets or helms. Nothing to change the cosmetic look of the face of your character. I have to look at this same guy the whole way through the game, and that includes all of the cutscenes and any other content around that character. You may have seen that IGN screen grab at the start of the video. They've also removed all of the relationship options or anything in depth with having a companion, romance, that sort of thing. It's very much what you see is what you get with just questing and storylines. That is technically quite refreshing. One thing, if you do get to play this game, that will wind you up no end is the exclamation mark against your companion or companion's name on the screen all the time in the bottom left. Now this is to do with dialogue and things that are hidden up within conversation options at the camps with your companions. You can sort of dig down, maybe get some side quests and some story. The turquoise fish dude, who sounds a bit like Clooney, someone called Brendan Keener apparently, they take it upon themselves, here we go, it started, to tell you about this really deep homosexual relationship they had a while back, and how they're all hurt and how it's got nothing to do with me as a war hero, right? Full-blown alpha. Read the room. I don't want to hear about this. If I'd picked relationship counselor as a build, bro might have a point, but it was compulsory to get rid of that goddamn exclamation mark. And if you're as OCD as me with that stuff, it had to be done. So despite what that lovely woman said about relationship arcs being taken out, you still have to listen to Kai's heartache. But that was like 1% of this game's content, and it did just make me think, it all felt a bit Tim Waltz, if you know what I mean. They've gone now, Coop. They've all gone. What, your audience? No, the Biden admin.
Thank you.
Looks like this guy was waiting for a friend to get back alive from Castle's Folly.
I wanted to bring up its strange day and night and camping system. Whenever you travel, you wake up within the camp, which is where you upgrade everything and muck around with putting stuff into stock. But the time of day will normally change. I'm not sure if this is a full-blown real-time dynamic day and night system. I've seen dusks and dawns, but not actually a full rotational day. But you do get the chance to enjoy things at night, and I would love to see this game with full-blown ray tracing. I imagine that would work fantastically. Sticking on the subject of upgrades, I just wanted to explore what that involves. You do pump elements into weapons that you like or favour. Some of them have already got upgrades put in, and you can technically enchant with adding magical elements. As mentioned, I tried really hard to stick with the traditional sword and bow and arrow setup. The shields, there's probably only about 3 different types in the whole front end of that game, which blew my mind. I would have liked to have seen more variety on that front, but the two-handed, double-handed hammers, axes and great swords are unbelievably good fun, all coming with a big build option and loads of gravitas and that swing and impact animation.
You stop.
And back to that combat routine briefly, you can have a two-handed sword or a big bow and then still go to your magical elements on that pause menu wheel. Not all of them are available, but the decent ones are. So you've almost got 3 builds going at once with this game. Also, you see these people I'm killing here, these plant mutated monstrosities. Don't kill them. Avoid them at the front end of that emerald map, because there's a queen there who bollocks the hell out of you for doing it, and you end up having to fight her, and it's one of the tougher sections of the front quarter.
Nothing
Nothing like a win with a good team.
Bigger bosses and enemies will have a yellow bar under their health. A little bit like Armored Core 6, you build this up, you get to go in for a massive animated damage dealing insta-kill. And on the subject of that first map, I noticed that there was a few side quests that I'd left undone. So I popped back, and the scenery, the depth of this cavern, the one-eyed williness of it all was unreal. It went right down. It was about 45 minutes long. It was one of the better quests I'd played so far in the game. This was a side quest that you would not pay attention to if you were trying to finish that campaign at high speed. When I'm inside these caverns and caves, it seems to perform a lot better, understandably, than the open areas or the larger cities or villages. The lighting is just incredible, and I have not got a lot of effects on. This will constantly happen to you. And again, this wasn't even something I would have seen if I wasn't running through all of those side quests. Something else that I barely used as much as I thought I would is the third person option. You can hold in the right analog stick and you'll get a real-time switch out, just like a lot of the other Obsidian games. I found myself not using the stealth as much as I thought I would. This might be something to do with my build, and that pulls me over to that companion complaint about not being able to allocate where they are or what their behavior model is. They can sometimes fall foul of you trying to sneak up to a bunch of enemies, but the detection system is pretty solid, and 9 times out of 10 everything goes as planned. They've also got a number of phases, including looking or even startled, and you get a damage bonus for enemies that are not suspicious of you whatsoever, a la Skyrim. That's the only Skyrim analogy.
Maybe one of Juliana's girls will too.
He's gonna have a hard time getting out of here, but at least we gave him a fighting chance.
Here we go.
The third person also chugs my system a little bit, but I think also it's testament to how good that first person action really is. I've got electrical water happening here because my amazing pistol is like a danger to man and beast, and yeah, I did get a few little Bioshock vibes here. You've probably seen some footage of mage builds with far more dramatic spells going than I've got put in. That's because I've got a base level book, and upgrading that requires you to put some points into higher echelons of spell creation. So that's a whole level of meta I have not got the chance to explore yet.
This reminds me of the Strangle Room.
Let's talk about its flawlessly implemented underwater mechanics. There's no combat down here as far as I'm aware, but there is loot, secret tunnels, areas to explore. It is worth your time going under the water, and you'd be forgiven in thinking that there was no underwater scenery at all. There are very few fish, there are no sharks. Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Origins aren't crapping themselves just yet. So I've picked a clip, I've picked a showcase clip to show you all of really what we've been talking about. It hasn't got any bears in it, but it does show the game running well and just the variety you expect on combat and that lighting. Check this out, guys.
Right behind you.
So I challenge you, gamers, here's my challenge, to have a go on this video game and then put the pad down and say, that's enough of that, that'll do for today. It's very difficult to say that to Avowed. It pulls you in so well, and if you're an Outer Worlds fan, you immediately be at home with all of it, but you've just got this amazing universe to explore. Other than the tiny bit of Tim Waltz stuff, I completely adore the game, and I wish I could see it in true 9th gen, with ray tracing, maybe a haptic pad. I genuinely would love to have this game on my PlayStation 5. This is not woke slop, far from it, and it's going to suffer the same as Outlaws and Alan Wake 2 by getting yanked in to this politics argument. Don't listen to these anti-woke creators. Make your own mind up about this video game and trust legacy creators, because we're here for the long run, not to just slag off Tim Waltz. I was, of course, Couch Coop, and the next video is going to be a local co-op Diablo 4 looking at that new season content. It's massive, it's free, it's got loads of scary monsters in it. I will see you down there.
Thank you.
Have you provided a thumbnail with your mouth open, interlinked? Are you sitting in front of IKEA shelves with bobbleheads, interlinked? Is the title the most annoying rhetorical question ever, interlinked? Is the content on the intellectual level of a 7-year-old, interlinked? Is the video game a day old and online only and costs £70, interlinked? Greg Miller's an absolute idiot, interlinked?
You're not even close to baseline.